there are complications with types of maps, types of strategies, and the way the map selection system works in Phobies. Now, by map selection system, and I'm opening my jacks in the background, hence the noise, the map selection system literally doesn't exist in Phobies as compared to real-time strategies where you can select a map by thumbing down certain ones and then constraining the pool to ones that you're, even if you don't like them, you'll at least tolerate playing on them, as compared to a map that you just flat out hate. That is not possible in Phobies. And I think that due to the matchmaking issues it represents, that is just not possible. For every single person out there that complains, oh my God, I had a 90-second queue. First of all, what are you complaining about? Like, that is not bad. Now, don't get me wrong. You're at the tippy top of the ladder. You are Alien Engineer. You are Karst. You are whatever literally at the top of Mount Ego. Yeah, your queues are going to be long. Them's the breaks. That happens in basically every single game. That is a known thing. What are you going to do? There are things you can do, but independent discussion, trying not to digress as I usually do. So, matchmaking aside, how do we build map pools? Hey, just jumping in before we continue with everything. Of course, I have to let everybody know that I am part of the content affiliate program. That means that the Phobies team does, in fact, give me coffee for producing Phobies content. Just getting it in there, letting everybody know, but let's get back to the highlights. And we know for a fact that the dev team builds the pools by hand and says, hey, these are the map pools for this week. This is the rotation we're doing. Now, I'm assuming that they are taking this into account. As I mentioned earlier, we have nearly 60 maps at this stage. We're getting close, at least by my count. Maybe I missed one or two. Maybe we're at 60. But the point is that we're close to it. It's an enormous map pool, and even though haven't seen things like Agora, thank God, for forever, and then way back when we lost the penny dropped for months for some reason, it is interesting to see what maps they choose, and I can only assume that they are building it around the idea that there are certain buckets, we'll say, of how maps work and how they should be structured, and what the general strategies are on them, where this is a slow map, a stall map, as people will call it, an aggressive map, a phobie fight map versus a heart rush map versus a panic point map versus a this map versus these maps center around stims, these maps center around boops, these maps center around this. And I like the map system in Phobies to highlight strategies, to highlight different phobies, different things, but because of the collection system, because of the way packs are acquired and the way people acquire phobies and the way you level them up, it presents these issues where, great, we have a map that, nukes pullers somehow. I don't know how that would happen, but hypothetically, we have a map where it's really bad to put pullers on the board, but you really want big fat guys like Cerberus and Dozer and Hydra. Don't ask me how this map exists, but again, hypotheticals. Let's say this map exists and you just don't have any of those. Do you just get bodied? Because that's kind of what happens on the once lore, just in a different scenario. If you don't have Akiras, you don't have pulls, kind of up a creek, right? And I think in the grand scheme of things, and I've said this on many occasions before, I assume and I believe the game is designed around the idea that Phobies presumes you have all of the phobies and you have them all at an appropriate level. Because otherwise, the game does run into some challenges with matchups. You can certainly have unique setups where these phobies are really high level of yours, and that means you can overpower and win through a scenario that you wouldn't have otherwise won because you really are putting the quote-unquote incorrect ones onto the board to fight your opponent's composition or just to traverse the map. It could also be the opposite, where you just get bodied. You just get absolutely mollywopped. It happens. And I think this all comes back to why I like Fright Night and Monster of the Week, which is not a big pat on the back to me, but trying to encourage people to play at a more standardized level. We're still only doing so much because I'm not going to mess with people's collections, or I'm trying desperately not to. I'm sure the ban discussion will come up again, but as far as map selection goes, I really hope that we get all maps in front of me, because making these map pools would be beneficial. But circling back to one of the earlier points, I think it is fine to have stall maps. Some people enjoy those big stalemates and getting those incremental advantages and trying to prove over the course of a 80-turn game that they're better than their opponent. Not everybody likes that. Not everybody likes heart rush maps because they don't want to sit there and be like, oh, hey, the game's over in 10 turns because, oops, I mispositioned by 1 hex and the game just ends on the spot. Even though the game may have ended in that 80-turn game due to the same thing way before and just it felt more innocuous. I think it's fine to have these different things. There's also an argument that the maps should have multiple paths to victory. They always do, but realistically, certain strategies are better or worse on certain maps. And I think that it's fine to have maps that are very linear. This is the thing that you do on this map. It's just when there's an overwhelming amount in a given pool, like that week's rotation, or just overall, that it's, hey, every map essentially boils down to this same thing. And I think we had a series of rotations or a combination of rotations and the Phobies available when, say, a Tractor was first released in the months following, where we were kind of stuck in that rut. Now that we have so many maps, the team seems to be curating the map pool with greater intensity. We obviously have way more Phobies available. I think things are changing to a degree, but I do not want to see stall maps going away because ultimately there is a segment of the player base that I promise you loves those things. And we shouldn't just throw them into the cold because when I say we're just, assorted players among the community. We don't enjoy those things because there are people that do, and it's fine. And it's also a skill to be tested. It goes back to the same Akira argument. You may not like Akira, the old Akira. Maybe you're fine with the new Akira, whatever. The point is that it's hard to argue that Akira is not skill testing for both players. You just don't like the scenario that's created. And that is a valid reason to possibly change things, but it needs to be considered very, very carefully. And that's kind of what it boils down to.